Hi, and welcome to Tom Kennedy Science. I'm, of course, your host, Dr. Tom Kennedy. And this is part 5 of my 5-part series on what is science. And this one is one I feel like we have to include in any science class because, so often we teach all these facts about science. We teach how a cell works. We teach, about genetics. And we rarely take the time to expand on the role of science in our everyday lives and critical thinking. Because remember, science at its heart is a way of understanding the world around us. It invites us to let the facts in. And this is how we inform our opinions. It's based on facts, right? I mean, this is important stuff. And, we get our preconceptions challenged sometimes, and that's okay. But we use science as our guiding principle. And when we don't, things go bad. And so I feel it's very necessary that, especially in today's world, that we talk about the role of science, the role of critical thinking in our everyday lives. So I'm warning you, you're about to be exposed to some conspiracy theories and fraudulent claims. I know, so I primed you. You're about to be exposed here. So what do we have here? All right. Critical thinking is the ability to evaluate facts, observations, experimental results, and to make an informed decision. And if you've watched this series of videos, you know that we analyze the results of our experiments using statistical tests that help us interpret those data. And then once we get the data back, science is going to tell you how the world is working, right? It's going to tell you, it's going to inform you. But you have to say, okay, this data is good. The data from the Pfizer vaccine is solid data. We can use that to say, hey, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to take the vaccination. Why? We know it works. We know it's safe. How do we know? Data, right? Okay. Now, in our world, there has been some crazy conspiracy theories. And the internet, as much as I love internet and I love social media, it's unfortunately a consequence of that has brought fringe beliefs to mainstream. Like this idea, this an offshoot of QAnon, that there are these alien lizard-like shape-shifting beings that have infiltrated our world at the highest levels, including the Clintons, the Obamas, Bill Gates, amongst others, and that they are manipulating the world, right, for their purposes, and that they have to have, the blood of children to sustain them. 10 million people believe in this. I don't get it either. But it's there. These conspiracy theories are not just ridiculous, they are absurd, but they are not harmless. And in fact, as we have seen, the role of conspiracy theories is affecting our lives, and they're not harmless theories. And in fact, I put a link on this to the NBC News, which I think gave a really interesting write-up on the origins of some of these conspiracy theories and say they're nothing new. And I love the comparison to Dracula. I had no idea that's where Dracula came from. I just had watched V from the 1980s one too many times. Yeah, I know. Why do they have to be lizard-like? What's wrong with lizards? Lizards are cool. Okay, but the role of critical thinking in our lives is that it gives us a way to be able to reject the notion of these conspiracy theories, to know that they're not real, that they're not based on any evidence. So let's move away to another thing that we're going to face here. We're in a pandemic. You guys are watching the news. 400,000 people have died, right? This is just horrible. Over millions of people have been infected. Our country has the worst outcomes of any country in the world. Why? Well, in part, we didn't listen to scientists, and a lot of us still don't. So we got a vaccination out. Now, I'm going to caution you one more time. Some of the following information linking vaccinations to autism is misleading. It's fraudulent. But I'm going to show it to you anyways. But be warned, I'm going to show you some fraudulent information here. It's fake. It's oh my gosh. But people are refusing to take their vaccinations. Here's some critical thinking. Okay, I like bourbon whiskey. I like rye whiskeys too. But recently, we just had our second child. My wife loves whiskey as well, but during our pregnancies, we don't drink alcohol. Well, why not? Because we know that drinking alcohol can have bad outcomes for our child. How do we know that? Evidence. Because when parents or moms drink alcohol when they're pregnant, it causes problems for the babies. We know that based on data. So we listen to our doctors here, right? But a lot of people don't listen to their doctors, especially when it comes to vaccinations. Now, once again, critical thinking. Can we evaluate facts, observations, experimental results, and use those to make an informed decision? And right now, we know, based on 70 years of data, that vaccines work. They work well. We've almost eradicated diseases. So why don't people get vaccinations? Why are they opting out? It's horrible. Well, it turns out that some people are fear of vaccinations because they think that it will give their kids autism or cognitive impairment, or that vaccinations are linked to cognitive impairment. And there is no link. I mean, read my headline. There is no link between autism and vaccinations. But where did this idea that vaccinations cause autism come from? A fraud. How about that? Andrew Wakefield was a fraud. For 23 years, we've been dealing with the fallout of his fraud. Here's how it started. He wanted to make money on your fear. Yes. So he published an article in a prestigious journal called The Lancet, supposedly linking vaccinations to autism. Okay, here's what happened. He made up the data. He made it up. It wasn't real. There was no link between vaccines and autism. It was never there. He made up the data to scare you, to make money. Isn't that crazy? He made it up. And why did he make up the data? We know it's to make money, but lots of money. He started out with hundreds of thousands. He was going to make millions off of this. Here's why. Before he published the data, before he published the results of his fake experiment, he already had hundreds of thousands of dollars from a law firm that was going to have suits against vaccine makers. So then he gets this money, these hundreds of thousands of dollars from these lawyers. And then he publishes the link. And he's like, there's going to be a fallout. So he set up in secret some businesses. One was to provide an alternative MMR vaccination, and the other one was to have a replacement kit. Yeah, this guy is a fraud. But hey, 23 years later, people are still talking about the link between vaccinations and autism. And that comes because the signs of autism show up about the time that you start getting your first rounds of vaccinations. And it's a correlation, but there is no link. And multiple studies have shown there is no link between vaccinations and autism. None. And it goes also against what we know about how the body works. We're learning that autism is quite complicated, but it's not caused by a vaccination. What do we know about vaccines? They work. That's a fact based on evidence. I mean, this is the number of polio cases in the U.S. after we got the polio vaccine. Thank you, Dr. Salk. We almost eradicated polio. There were a couple of pockets of it out there in the world, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get them, so there are these reservoirs of polio. People stopped getting vaccinations. Guess what? It comes back. So same with measles. Moms in Albuquerque and in other places were not getting their children vaccinated. Well, the outcome of this is obvious. These diseases start coming back, and they're infecting our children. Think about that. By opting out of vaccinations, your children get sick with this horrible disease that was preventable. All you had to do is get a vaccination. But yet, it's like we're almost a victim of our own success. We don't fear these diseases anymore because we don't see them. But they're there. They're coming back. And, this is a problem. So we know that vaccines work. We know they're safe. We know they're effective based on evidence. Look at this one. I showed this in another talk. This is measles cases. Can you pinpoint on the chart where we started having widespread measles vaccinations? Yeah, almost gone. Almost back. And measles is highly contagious. It kills people. I mean, I would never wish this on my child. And this is a largely preventable disease. And unfortunately, some people cannot get vaccinations because they're immunocompromised, or they might have a reaction to vaccinations. Just like some people have reactions to bees, although the people that are react to vaccinations are much fewer, much more rare. But they depend on us to be vaccinated so they don't get the disease. It's called herd mentality. And that's been in the news a lot. But if 95% of the population is vaccinated, then that few percentage of people that either can't get a vaccine because they're allergic to them, which is about 1 in 100,000 to 1 in a million or less, and those that are immunocompromised for various reasons, organ transplants, HIV, things like that, they are depending on the rest of us to be vaccinated because they can't get them. And if we don't vaccinate, then we put that population at risk as well. So, getting a vaccination not only protects you, it protects your children, and it protects the community in which we live in as well. So, man, it's important to do this, right? Now, COVID-19. Already, 42% of Americans have said they're not going to get a vaccination when it's available to them. That's sad. And this is actually a little bit more complicated than previous vaccinations. But the reality is, despite 400,000 deaths, 25 million people infected, 40% of people said they're not going to get vaccinations. Man, we could really nip this disease in the bud, this pandemic in the bud, in the next year if everybody takes their vaccinations. Now, if we don't get everybody vaccinated, this disease will hang out in the population. And because vaccinations are not 100% effective, we're still going to be at risk. So go get your vaccinations when they become available. It's really important. And like I said, we know that they're safe based on evidence, based on data. And with this widespread rollout, and there's been, 2 cases? That's it. Maybe a couple more out there. But considering millions of shots have been given, very, 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 very minute few people have had problems with this. So we need vaccinations. We need critical thinking to understand that it's important to do that. Unfortunately, with the internet, has also spread a bunch of false claims. And the rise of false claims out there and not knowing where to get your information from is harmful as well. Because there are places out there that don't give out good information. They give out information that people want to hear rather than what they need to hear. So for instance, we know based on evidence that wearing a mask helps prevent the spread of coronavirus. Not only does it protect you, it also helps you from spreading it if you have it. Because one of the reasons why it spreads so easily is because you can be showing no signs of the disease and spread it. Another one, children are not almost immune to the virus. Now, it is true they often get it at a lower rate and may not be quite as severe as in older adults, but they still get it. They still have severe cases, and children still die. The virus will not just disappear or fade away. Not anytime soon. It is continuing to rapidly spread. We're having some of the fastest infection rates and highest death rates yet of the pandemic. Not going away. You just can't say it's going to go away and then it's going to go away. We need people to wear masks and get vaccinated. And another lie, 99% of cases are not totally harmless. No, 15% are severe. That's you in the hospital for weeks. And then we're also discovering that people have these lingering effects of the coronavirus months after they've recovered. So they haven't really fully recovered. So critical thinking, is the ability to evaluate information. And like I said, some news sources out there don't give out accurate information. So where do we find good information? Believe it or not, the CDC is still good. I know. And yeah, the Mayo Clinic is still good. The New York Times gives out accurate information. So you can still find accurate information on this virus out there. And then another problem with the lack of critical thinking is the rise of pseudoscience. Pseudoscience just means fake science. And in semesters past, I've always talked about homeopathy, the flying spaghetti monster, and the Pastafarians and stuff like that. But as we face a pandemic, people often turn to alternative forms of medicine that have been shown not to work. And, these alternative forms of medicine that don't work, like homeopathy, they're basically pseudoscience. They're just fake science. They look like science, but they're not supported by evidence and facts. There's only medicine that basically works based on evidence. So, for example, you can't go inject bleach or other disinfectants into your body to either, I don't know what they said, prevent or treat coronavirus. It doesn't work like that. That's claims from an uninformed, scientifically illiterate government official that had no understanding of basic science was out there saying that crap. So this is the need, why we need to, as a society, to be informed. I cannot overemphasize that our society as a whole, we depend on a scientifically informed populace making good decisions. When we don't listen to the science, when we don't use critical thinking, what happens? Well, the U.S. has the most number of cases of the coronavirus of any country in the world. Huh. Did we listen to our scientists very much? No. Large segments of our society have ignored what we need to be doing. Now, that's a whole nother debate for another time. There's a lot more to that story. But, we got to listen to the science, right? To end this. And then the thing we have to do now is go get our vaccinations as quickly as we possibly can to end this thing. So science matters. Science matters now more than ever. Science and critical thinking. Okay, I know that's a hard way to end a 5-part series on science, but I hope you enjoyed it. All right, until next time, this has been Tom Kennedy Science.